on the market and off the record, the Lindi Camaron Team on KWHI.
Okay, and we're going to introduce our guest speaker today is Shane Nelson with Bluebonnet Abstract and Title. They are a very trusted title company here in Washington County, and they changed the game for title work and service in this area. He and Carrie Poffenberger co-own and have built the company on faith and customer service. And Shane and his wife Erin have 2 children and
Four.
Sorry.
I've been busy.
4 children, and they just started the firm 5 years ago and have since opened locations in Belleville, Round Top, and College Station as well. So over to you, Shane.
Okay. Well, thanks, ladies, for having me. And we, like Lindi said, Carrie and I are the sole owners of Bluebonnet. We're happy to have a locally owned title company here serving the areas, and our focus is customer service. As people may or may not know, title companies, we have to really charge the same price. How we differentiate ourselves is customer service. That's really what we have to offer, and that's what we focused from day one on. We've been able to build a great team, not only here locally, but all the surrounding counties that we're in. Many people have no idea what a title company does. I really didn't know a whole lot, years before I started Bluebonnet. We are the middleman of real estate transactions. So anytime somebody is trying to buy or sell a property, a house, refinance a loan, do a construction loan, the title company is that kind of middleman that puts everybody together. Nobody's our client. So even though I like Lindi and Cameron, they're not my clients. Sellers are not my clients. Buyers are not my clients. Lenders are not my clients. But I still have to treat everybody with fiduciary responsibilities. I have to treat everybody equally. I have to follow that contract. So at the end of the day, I'm the middleman, but I'm treating everybody with kind of equal or due care.
Your goal is to minimize risk for all parties.
Right. So at the end of the day, we are trying to close the transaction. We do that with full disclosure of what's affecting the property and minimize risk. So a lot of what we do, title insurance, even though it's title, it is still insurance. We reduce risks for that closing process. And whether it's fraud, whether it's easements, whether it's survey issues, all the above, anything related to a property, we're trying to do full disclosure to the buyer of what's affecting the property, and we try to minimize risk for the buyer, for the seller, for the lender, for everybody involved. So every time we have a transaction, we're looking at how do we do a full disclosure, what's affecting the property, and how do we minimize risk getting that transaction over the closing date.
Talking about that, we get a question a lot of times as to why my spouse has to sign on the deed.
Good questions, because you're married, right? It's a simple answer is that under Texas, if you're married, you have extra obligations, or there's extra protection for the spousal property, particularly the homestead rights. In Texas, you can have separate property or community property, and separate property is really something that you inherited prior to marriage, that you were maybe given as a gift, something like that. We presume it's community property unless we know for sure that it's separate property. So whenever you're married, the default way is every title company, we always want the spouse assigned to minimize any risk that it could be community property, that they're living on the property, that they lived on the property. You could have some homestead rights and all these other things. Were they paying to improve the property, have a joint bank account, all these different things, even though legally the spouse may not have to join, because, Lindi, we want to minimize risk of having any callback, any issue down the road. We always have the spouse sign just to keep everybody, above board.
Okay, what constitutes common law marriage?
Common law marriage is a fun married.
Fun marriage?
It can be a fun marriage. It depends, but no, it's a funny thing in Texas that we have. There's kind of 3 or 4 factors. It all depends. You have to have kind of agreement between the people to be married. You have to live together, cohabitate, and you have to kind of represent to others that you are married. And so sometimes people are common law married, but of one person, generally it's the guy, they say they're not married, even though the lady thinks they're married, they're not married. We've had actually disputes at the closing table between 2 people, whether they were married or not. And we just sit back and watch the fireworks. And so, but at the end of the day, there is a common law marriage. And if you have, so there's certain factors, just for a CYA for us, we will always have those 2 people sign if there's any dispute.
Okay.
Is there a benefit for signing a transfer on death deed?
A transfer on debt deed, there's kind of two, maybe you're asking about end of life planning. And so whenever you die, their property is always owned by somebody. And so whether you have a will that's probated, whether you don't have a will that's probated, the laws of Texas determine who owns the property after your death. What some people do as you get, closer to end of life planning, you do transfer on death deed, and that kind of circumvents your typical will, probate, or what the laws of Texas would do. So let's say I died, or before I died, I said, hey, my property I'm giving to Miss Lindi. Okay.
All right.
We're good friends. I'm giving you property. That basically trumps my will in the laws of Texas. So that whenever I die, the minute that I die, that property is automatically transferred to you. Okay. Somebody could dispute that, but that circumvents the need for a probate, all these other things. And so it's a cheaper, easier, sometimes more effective way, an easier way to transfer property. If that's the only property you have, that could be a cheaper way than to do probate and a bunch of other.
And that deed's recorded.
That's deeds recorded. You could talk to me, talk to a few other lawyers in town.
And if you decided not to die right away and you decide to sell the property.
So the good thing about like a transfer on death deed or a ladybird deed, that's revocable until the day you die. So let's say I signed that, you and I got a little tiff, Lindy. I could say I could revoke that transfer on death deed, and that's fine. But that has to be recorded to give the public notice. But the minute I die, if it has not been revoked, that goes into effect.
Okay. And what about power of attorneys? How important are those to have in place ahead of time?
So this is where you start, people don't like lawyers. You don't like lawyers until you need a lawyer. Same thing for doctors. Like I say, you don't like doctors unless you need a good doctor. But end of life planning, you like to have a medical power of attorney. You have, which is different than kind of a traditional power of attorney for financial or real estate matters. You always have to have those done, in advance, because if you need it and you don't have it done, it's generally too late. So lots of folks will have a power of attorney. I have a power of attorney for my wife. She has one for me. Lots of times as you get older in age, it's nice to have a power of attorney so that if you're not around or if your faculties start, slowly eroding, somebody else can handle your transactions for you, including the sale of real estate. We have to have the original. Just a signed copy doesn't work. We have to have the original. We record that, and then we can sell property or buy property in Texas using a valid power of attorney. And we do that all the time.
Okay, great. So what's your most difficult closing that you've ever done?
Some are easy. Unfortunately, in rural counties, like in Washington County, Austin County, Fayette, there's not a lot of easy ones. Kind of probably 3 or 4, I guess, jump out at me. One of them I call a jailbait. We actually finally closed that back in January or February. It was an awful story where the owner of the property, I won't go into all the details because it's not good. I told Lindi about it yesterday. But a short answer is just because you're in jail doesn't mean you can't sell property. If there's an owner in jail who owns property, we still have to work with that. And so this instance, the person was in California under a felony conviction, and it took us 6 months to work with the prison, and a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of frustrated buyers and sellers and lenders to get actually them to sell the property. That's that was an emotionally hard one and took a long time. We've had 50 plus people sign deeds. If you have a lot of property in Washington County, being one of the oldest counties in Texas, if they've never transferred the property or had the wills done, you have 3 or 4 or 5 generations owning the property. And when we do our title search, we'll have 50 to 100 people potentially owning a property. That's not easy, and that takes a long time
that
to
gets
close.
real messy.
No, it does. But the fun thing is, I'm sure Camaron and Lindi would say, each day is different, each closing's different. Closings that look like they're easy may fall apart at the end of the closing table. And so really each one is a new day. It's that's part of the fun and part of the challenge though of this business.
Yes, I remember last summer we had a multi-million-dollar deal and it fell apart just over a tractor at the very end. So we've had a lot of good stories.
Talking about that kind of falling apart of a tractor, I've got a good one. We did something out of Round Top, and this was a multi-million-dollar property. There were some deed restrictions on the property, and one of them was chickens.
Oh yeah.
And
Couldn't have chickens.
could not have chickens. And the buyers were adamant. They were buying 5-10 acres and out there in Fayette. They wanted chickens. And so we had a multi-million-dollar property, fall apart, and ended up kind of working out the end of but over chickens. And so it's just, you never know though what might happen on that point. And whenever we do the title search, if there is a property, if there are restrictions on a property, whether it's a lot or acreage, then we will show restrictions of things affecting that property. Now, buyer beware, we don't change the facts, we don't change the rules. If it's affecting the property, it applies to the property. And that's also another instance where having an experienced agent will help you navigate, look at the restrictions. They can't advise necessarily on a legal deals, but they can at least let you know what's normal, what's not, and help you circumvent or navigate what you can and can't do potentially on a property.
Which leads into how important it is to have a local surveyor survey the property and make sure that you're getting all, encroachments, pipelines, everything recorded on your survey so you don't go to build a $1 million home over a pipeline.
Yeah, and we've had issues with that where surveyors miss things, right? There's good doctors, bad doctors, good lawyers, bad lawyers, good surveyors, and bad surveyors, right? Most of the local ones are good. You have some out-of-town surveyors that we've seen are not near as good, and they've missed things, and that's an issue. And whether we disclose or not, if the surveyor misses something, it's a big deal for everybody.
I think that we've had times definitely when the survey was turned in and then we found a pipeline that wasn't caught.
Or a cemetery.
Or
right?
cemeteries
Or
just this week.
Or the garage is halfway over the line or on the neighbor's property.
Yeah, we had one a couple of years ago where it was 3 or 4 acre tracts, and the neighbor, they were doing the survey, they didn't realize that the neighbor, I don't know how they didn't realize it, but the neighbor built like the garage on their property. And so they couldn't sell their property because they had the neighbor's garage on their property. So they had to go replatting process and everything else. So you really don't know what you have. And I would always say, get a new survey. Just you never know what you don't know, whether it's a boundary issue, whether it's a fence line issue, or just something unknown. Why do you have a very expensive purchase without getting a survey? Still kind of blows my mind seeing what I see every day.
We really appreciate the preliminary title reports on our listings so that you're prepared ahead of time if there's anything out of the ordinary that's been recorded against the property, because a lot of times the sellers don't even know what may have taken effect. They might have paid off their mortgage 15 years ago, but there wasn't a release recorded.
Right.
And then that bank's out of business now, and what do?
Yeah, there's a lot of cleanup whenever we do title reports or title, searches and getting a title commitment, which is everything affecting the property that we can find publicly, whether there's rights of first refusal or liens or abstract of judgment, child support liens. I mean, the gambit of anything and everything we see. So even if I was buying property from my parents, I would still want to do a title search, title report, and maybe title insurance, because you just don't know.
Right.
You have no idea what's been applied to the property intentionally or unintentionally.
Right.
What about wire fraud? Have y'all dealt with any of that?
We've seen fraud's the biggest issue affecting probably the title industry and maybe the real estate industry. It's kind of two factors. One is seller fraud, and the other is wire fraud. A seller fraud, we've seen a couple of instances of that where we haven't been a victim of it yet, but we've nipped it in the bud or identified it. And it's typically vacant land and somebody lives out of state. The two things that come to my mind is there was a property, the listing agent hadn't met the seller in person. They have a contract, they get it done, the survey goes to the property. The next door neighbor sees the surveyor, and starts questioning, and come to find out he wasn't supposed to be there, wasn't selling the property. And that's something that we were able to kind of identify early on. The other one was, again, vacant property, out of state, in Colorado, seller, listing agent hadn't met the seller in person. They started, we had a contract, we were getting ready to close about a week in advance, and we were trying to start work with the seller. The seller wanted to use their own notary. One of the rules in our business is for fraud protection, we have to send our own notary or third-party notary to the seller. They didn't like that, and so things started kind of, getting weird, or they started not responding to phone calls. Come to find out, it was not the right seller, right? And so there is potential fraud every transaction. You mentioned the wire fraud, though. Anytime you send wire money to us or we send money to somebody else, there's a ton of wire fraud issues. We've seen different issues that not our fault, but we've seen whether with our title company or other title companies where there's been issues on sending and receiving money. And anytime you send money to a title company, whether it's us or somebody else, you have to call the title company to confirm wire instructions. You're never gonna have to send it to somebody else or third party or lender. That's all spam. That's all fraud. It has to go straight to the title company, and that's why you do need to call your title company. Make sure you can verify those wire
Definitely verify.
Never
I've had
click on anything.
people, intercept with emails and saying, "Here's the account information," and it was all fraud, and they sent the money. And
what happens is most of our emails are unprotected, and you have phishing. You have all this different software on your phones and your computer that sit in the back and look at everything you do, and then at the right time they can send an email, make it look legit, and copy somebody's email, and it looks good, and you send wires out thinking you know nothing different.
They know you're about to close.
Right. And then once that wire's out, if that's the wrong people, whether it's us or whether somebody's sending money to us, you really can't get that money back. And so I have one person, 90% of their job just handles wires, right?
Yes.
That's something different than anybody else here in town that we've been able to do, because that's a big issue affecting our industry. Once that wire's out to the wrong person, you can't get that back.
Yes, we tell all of our clients, just double, triple check, call direct. Do not, give that information out anywhere. So, so important.
Okay. Well, how do we contact you?
Sure, it's pretty easy. Bluebonnetabstract.com. We're on social media. We have 979-353-2553. That's our main number for any of our offices. We're happy to help if we can be a help to the service, whether it's a little old lady, whether it's a new first home buyer. We kind of do the gambit of lots, construction, developers, and so give us a call, shoot us an email, and we're happy to help if we can.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Shane. That was lots of good information.
Happy to help, and thanks for having me.
For sure. If we want to hear from y'all, of course, we like to hear what y'all want to hear next month and throughout the year. So if y'all have any topics you're wanting us to bring to the show, let us know. You can reach us on Facebook. Our phone number is 979-451-4645, or you can check out our website, thelcteam.com. Our next show is going to be on July 9th, and it's going to be a surprise.
And if you have any questions, you can always email sold@thelcteam.com. Thanks, y'all.
All right. Thank y'all. See you next month. Bye.